You don't need to be surviving through motherhood. This can be a thriving time of your life. I have never been as healthy as I am now being a mother to my toddler. And this didn't happen by accident. There are a lot of really big and a lot of really small everyday habits that I've implemented that have made such a difference to my experience as just a healthy person and being my best self and the mother and how I show up for my kid. And one of the choices that I made that I think has a great influence on that is my friendship with Jacqui. Not only is she a supportive friend to have, which is very important, but also we have a lot of shared values and shared approaches to parenting. And I'm so grateful for that space as a soundboard for how we can be our best selves and show up for our kids the way that we want to show up for our kids. We're constantly implementing lots of things, having discussions, evaluating things that we're doing, looking at it, seeing how we can make those changes. And we've had so many of these discussions around little and big things that we implement as mothers that have really been a profound thing on our journey. And that's what today's video is sharing tips and healthy habits for you as a mom, how you can be your best self and show up for your kid in the best way possible. We want for you and for all mothers to be thriving on their journey, but we also recognize we do not live in your house. We are not parenting your children. We do not have your resources, your support. We don't know what's going on for you. And Jacqui and I don't have the same factors in our lives either. So a lot of what we share today is working for us. But please remember to watch this video and see and check in with yourself. What works for me? Can I implement this? Should I adapt it to be different for my situation and my life? Where am I needing things to be different? Check in and see what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and how you maybe want to adapt anything that we say in this video. Also, please contribute to others' journeys by commenting down below any tips or healthy habits that have worked for you that you think could be valuable to others. Now, with that all being said, we are going to get straight into the first habit from Jacqui.
Thanks so much, Carmen. And I just want to say I value your friendship so much as well. And maybe that's a good first tip then that I would give to other moms is have a soundboard. Like you said, I think so much in motherhood, I found I get caught up in my head, overthinking, worrying about things. And it has been so helpful to be able to give you a call or send you a WhatsApp and just check in, because oftentimes as I'm sending you a voice note, for example, something clicks for me, and it's just like connecting with another mom, connecting with someone, hearing your insights and how you would have handled the situation. I found that so incredibly valuable, and often just helps put my mind at ease. Just like I said, it's not even necessarily someone giving you advice. It's not even necessarily about advice. It's just that connection, that feeling like, okay, someone gets me, someone understands me, someone sees me. And yeah, that's been so valuable.
Yes, that is literally one of the tips that I wrote down. I think we can break it up maybe into two parts of that you mentioned. The first one is soundboarding. I am building this community still, but I'm so appreciative of the community that I have of moms who have shared values and similar approaches to things, specifically as my soundboarding moms, and watching them parent and listening to how they would have handled a particular situation, knowing that we have shared values, shared approaches. So for me, it's very important to have a very strong connection with my child. There's a lot of things that I value and attachment to her. So I'm unlikely to soundboard with a parent whose approach is very different from that. Although it's always good to hear some information that differs from your own. But if you're more on the attachment, connecting sphere of parenting, you understand that you already kind of get the message that's very different from yours. So I don't necessarily have to go looking for that to find it. So a soundboard of similar approaches and values is very helpful. And watching parents who have children that are slightly older than mine and how they've handled things, and just observing that and asking them a few questions about that's been very helpful. And then the second part of that, I think, Jacqui, you can speak about this maybe some more if you'd like to, is someone who sees you and hears you and is listening to you, wholeheartedly listening to you, and just being there for you.
Exactly. I think just being heard and having space held for you is really, really valuable. And it's a lesson I really, really learned in this first year of parenting. Because in parenting my daughter, I realized that is the most important thing I can do for her is hold space when she's feeling big emotions and she's got, these feelings to share with me. And I realized that in order for me to be able to hold that space for her and to listen to her and be present with her, I also need to have my feelings heard. And it is really, really valuable just to, like you said, have someone just hear you and see you and hold space for you. I think that is such a game changer, and we don't have to take it all on our own shoulders. We can build that community to really connect with people. And maybe then another tip to add to that one is, like you said, connect with people with shared values. And it's okay to let go of relationships or friendships with people that maybe don't share your values, and those relationships actually end up causing you a lot of stress because you're comparing yourself or judging yourself or feeling judged, or connecting with other parents whose approaches are quite different can be quite stressful. And I think that is a health tip is to realize you don't have to hang on to every single friendship and relationship if it isn't serving you.
Literally what you said there, because one of the tips I wanted to share was I have never been so aware of my time in a day until I had a kid. Like, I had so much more time to do lots of different things before I had a kid. And now I find that I want to be almost selfish, so to speak, with my time. And that was one of the things that I realized when I was spending time with people, but that time spent was not life enriching for me. That doesn't mean that all my friendships need to be this like profound discussions every time, but we had almost no shared values. The conversation felt like it took more energy out of me than it was giving back to me. And I would find myself kind of dreading that time or thinking like, I wish I was at home making some food or doing something else with that time. So I think it's worth evaluating how we're spending our time and the people that we're choosing to spend our time with. And like you said, it is stressful. And for me, it is energy draining when I'm spending time with people who have vastly different values and approaches to life, because I kind of feel like I have to censor myself or explain like a lot of things just to have like a simple conversation, or otherwise we just default to very small talk conversation, which is not something that I typically enjoy.
Similarly, I find that there's this culture sort of in motherhood, and there's a lot of jokes or humor being made around it that I don't think is funny at all, but you often see these like Instagram reels and things of mothers really feeling quite victimized in motherhood, and really actually making quite cruel jokes about their kids. And I find it, I really find it off-putting. And unfortunately, I find that it becomes the default conversation to really, talk about all the negatives. And that's not to say that if you meet up with a friend, you can't talk about anything maybe, negative or emotional that's going on for you. Of course, there's incredibly difficult and challenging things, and it's really is helpful to share that with someone. But to get into this mentality of just complaining about our kids and, complaining about motherhood, and I find that there's almost this default and this culture that's being created around that. And I really try and remove myself from those situations because I just find it off-putting and it doesn't serve me at all.
Yeah, I really resonate with that. That's something it's a big thing for me to move away from the survival mindset of motherhood and I'm a victim to my children and to parenting and all of that. And that's where you touched on it so well, is we can have hardship and we can talk about hard and we can talk about challenges in a way that's real, that's connecting, that is life enriching, and that is not surface level complaining and complacency to the victim mentality. And I see this a lot where someone will ask for some advice on how to deal with something, or they're doing things with their kids, like habits in their home that they don't really want to do, but they kind of don't know how to move away from that. And someone will be like, don't you worry, do what you need to survive this time. We're all just trying to survive our little, and people often use a term like monsters and so forth. And that's very difficult for me, because that is kind of saying, live in that state of you're a victim to it. I think that when we're surrounded by that, it's quite hard to pull out and to hold on to the fact that I love motherhood. I don't want to speak that way of my child. I don't want to hear you speak that way of your child. And I'm happily will hold space for the hardships and the challenges that you experience, but I don't want to be your complain buddy. And this is not just true for people complaining about their children. I find that in motherhood as well, the way that people speak of their spouses is also very challenging for me. It's a lot of, oh, they're so useless. They don't know how to, take care of the baby, and they're not doing this for me. They're not doing that for me. And again, there's a stat that your marriage satisfaction declines by something like 67% in the first year of your child's life. It's hard. I get it. It's hard. I am married. But let's talk about the hard. Let's not be the people sitting around complaining about our spouses in a way that isn't really doing anything. And it features in that guy's book, Mark something, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F, where he says outrage is almost like addictive. Like we get outraged together, like, oh, how dare they? But it's not really contributing to your life in a meaningful way to do that. You don't really feel heard in that time. It's not really offering something of value to you. So I do find that I try to surround myself with people who can speak about hard, who can speak about challenges as not surface level complaining, and who also pull themselves out or don't even step into the mentality of I'm a victim to my spouse and to my child and to this role of motherhood, where I mostly surround myself by people who are like, I love being a mom. I love being a wife. I love the role that I play in our home. Like that feels so good for me to hear and to be around.
Exactly. It's uplifting, and it's so much better to surround yourselves with those types of people. And yeah, the next step I have to feed off of that one is actually something I learned from you, is to learn to make requests. Because I think with people complaining about their spouses, it's just this assumption that they should know. Like, oh, why does my husband never do this? Why does my husband never do that? Why do I always have to do everything myself? And something that I've really, really learned this year is to really make time with my husband, just to have a good check-in. What's going on for me, what's going on for him, what am I struggling with, what is he struggling with, and then make requests where I feel I need some support. I don't assume that he knows what I'm thinking or that he knows what I need. I discuss what I need, and I say to him, hey, can you please get home from work half an hour early? It would really make my evenings a lot easier. Or make those kinds of requests that are going to really help you, instead of just complaining and never do enough for you. You know what I mean? I feel like it's also become like a default conversation to have.
For sure. And just to get a little bit theoretical about that, the word there, requests. To make a request of someone is to say, this is my need, this is my feeling, this is a strategy that I'm proposing to meet the need that I have. And a request means I'm willing to hear you say no. I'm willing to hear alternative ways that we can meet my need. Because a lot of people say, oh, no, I told him to do the laundry or to pick that up or to the... Yes, that's a demand. You're just telling them what to do. A relationship where we both thrive with our needs met is conversations around how can we strategize such that our needs are met. And I've been doing workshops for years. I'm an employment relations practitioner. I do the dynamics of the employment relationship. And that for me extends to all other relationships. And one of the examples I often give is don't allow something to continue to irritate you over and over and over and over. If you are finding something irritating over and over and over, it's time to do something about it. Now, how do we do something about it? The example I have is my husband always used to take my charger and charge his phone all over the house. And I'm someone, I like my charger to stay in one place so I know it's over there, and then I go and I plug whatever device in over there, but he would carry it around the whole house. Now, yes, I could say, listen, I like my charger to be in the one place, stop carrying it around the house. But that did not result in that not happening. Because here's the thing again, we're habitual people and we do things differently. So again, stop trying to tell somebody else exactly how you expect things to be. But how I solved that problem is we have a lot of chargers in our house. It was a small monetary thing that I did to buy him a bunch of chargers that he can carry around the house so that he does not need to touch my charger. And that's a way to say, well, that request isn't kind of working. What else can I do? And this transcends to many things in our home that both of us have said, well, simply asking you to do it is not, it's not happening. So, for example, he'd love that I pack the dishwasher more efficiently, but it's just, it doesn't happen, you know? So we came up with a thing that the dishwasher now goes on twice a day. And both of us love that because I hate it trying to figure out, oh, this dish, that dish, whatever dish. I just like to put them in and close it up. And it's working so well for us. So be willing to strategize with your partner as opposed to, this is my need, this is my feeling, you must do X. Don't let things continue to irritate you. Get creative. Start making like it's fun. So, okay, well, this thing irritates me all the time. Let's try this. No, it didn't work. Okay, let's try something else and go about it that way because that transcends to your kid too. Your kid doesn't want to do something you want them to do. Get creative with them.
Exactly. And becoming parents is one of the biggest changes in your marriage that you'll ever experience. And it is, I think that's one of the most important ways to keep your marriage healthy is to learn to make those requests and have those discussions. Because yeah, I've just seen so many parents just become so cynical about each other as they have kids. And it really doesn't have to be that way. And it's not easy. Like, you know, I think this is the one of the biggest lessons I've learned this year is that parenthood is the portal to self-development and all of those things that you probably still need to work on internally will rear up during parenthood. And yeah, definitely communication with your partner is one of those things where I think we need to learn to let go of our ego a little bit, and just really learn to communicate well, because that is going to make your parenthood journey so much easier and more special as a couple.
Yeah. And on that relationship note, because I said the stat about the satisfaction thing, but again, we're not victims to that. We're not victims to, oh, it's hard and relationships are hard, etc., etc. This has been the hardest year for my marriage, like in our entire relationship. And I can tell you, what a gift. What a gift. We worked through like things that were kind of there in the initial part, but like never important enough to really resolve, that have really come to light. Like there is so much growth that has come from hard. If we're willing to do hard and lean on your support system, that's what I did. I leaned hard on my support system who knows my values and my commitment to my marriage and how to choose to approach it. I never, ever once discussed things with people who will climb on the train of complaining, because that was not helpful for me when I'm struggling. You turn to people who are like, I hear you, I see you. And once you're heard and once you're seen, you can move to some suggestions around strategies. But on a lighter note, something very cool, and I'll link it down below if you can get it in your country, is the Esther Perel conversation cards. If you haven't already read Esther Perel's work, I highly recommend Mating in Captivity. It's a book for monogamous couples, as you can probably tell by the title. She developed conversation cards that her husband and I do often, and they bring in this element of play and fun, and you think you know each other, and there's so much that still comes out in these conversations. So like Jacqui was saying, make time for your partner, make time for conversations, and sometimes having prompt cards makes it a lot easier to do when you're in motherhood and you're tired and you maybe, don't feel playful. Then you've got these prompts that can help just a little bit to get into that mindset of connecting with your partner.
Yeah, and just as I think it's important to make time to have those conversations with your partner, I think it's also important to make time for yourself. And one of the strategies I put in place this year is that when my daughter naps, it doesn't mean that I need to get a million things done. I can also use that time for my downtime. And it made a huge difference to me because I realized that I was just feeling incredibly overwhelmed, incredibly tired, and yeah, just all over the place. And it's because during her naps, I was trying to use that time to be productive, to get things done, to organize things. And I just realized by the end of the day, I was just absolutely finished. And a strategy that I started putting in place was to use her naps, at least one of her naps in the day, to just use that time for myself, check in with myself, have a little bit of time to journal or meditate or roll up my yoga mat or do something where I can just connect with myself a little bit, see what's going on for me. Yeah, maybe just have a little conversation with myself. And I found that really, really helpful.
So valuable. Elba has a play sitter who comes twice a week for 2 hours. It's what it sounds. It's someone who just plays with her. The person is not there to meet her physical, emotional, anything kind of needs. I'm in the house. I'm there. Just someone who plays a little differently for me. And then I've got hands to do other stuff. When I first started doing that, I had this pressure to use that time so productively that I would almost like stress, like, okay, she's here. What must I do now? What can I do first? And I remember my husband saying, you can just sit under a tree and read while they play outside. Mm-hmm. Or just lie there. I was like, what? I can do that. And there was a few times that I did. They would play outside and I would just sit under a tree reading. And it was so meaningful because we always think we have to be productive, but time for rest, time for just being or being creative, those things are productive in a different way. And the way that I can then show up thereafter is so amazing. So like Jacqui said, check in with what you're needing. If you're needing a little bit of rest on that day, that's probably the most productive thing you can do. On the note of rest, a tip that I'm still working on, or a habit that I'm still working on that's not that easy, is if you are a breastfeeding mom or a contact napping mom or a hold your child a lot kind of mom, like I think Jacqui and I are, you do spend a lot of time or more time than you used to sitting or lying down. And I found that often I default to scrolling in that time because I have got my device nearby. So I would not be actively resting then because scrolling is not actively resting. It's like numbing out of life and consuming a whole lot of stuff. Where the habit that I would like to share, and I'm still working on myself to improve it, is to rest actively or to use time in a way that is more meaningful. Now, one of the ways that I found that works, because there's a lot of stuff I tried that didn't work. Now, I love to read and I love to read a physical book, but I don't always have that with me, and it's not so easy to do that when she's breastfeeding and so forth. So a game changer is the Kindle, because the Kindle is very similar to your phone, but it doesn't have all that stuff. And then loading a few books on there has been something that is very useful for me to get away from the scrolling and to still be able to do something that is restful and consume content in a way that is much less overstimulating and a whole lot of, like, I don't want to talk about the stuff with screens, but a Kindle, just turn off the blue light part of it. And I think that's a much better habit.
Yeah, I love that. I really look forward to my reading time. It's like my little treat, like giving myself a little treat in the day, and I just get to cuddle up and read. And it's crazy because as much as I love it, if the phone is there and it's tempting me, it's so easy to go scroll social media or something. And I hate that feeling. I hate that feeling of like 15 minutes of your life gone by and you're like, what did I do? Do I even remember anything that I even just consumed? So I really think it's worthwhile putting in that effort to adjust that habit.
Yeah. And if you're willing to do it, something that helped me break away from the phone is check how much time you spend on your social media apps on a day. Have that real-time feedback of, wow, that's how much of my day, when I'm constantly complaining that I don't have enough time to do things, that's how much time I spent. Like I tell people, oh, I don't have time to read a book. But look at that time I spent scrolling. And that is another habit that I want to share is we have a tendency in our society to compare. And I find that with motherhood, it's a new adjustment, so forth. So maybe there's stuff that you feel, I guess, sensitive about, or things that you're still learning and you're growing. Choose who you see. And that's like the same thing we mentioned with the friendships you have in your life. Choose the mothers and the people whose lives you look at. And remember that social media is not real. Okay. So you're firstly just getting a glimpse of them. But I like to pick people who inspire me. And I don't compare myself to them in the way that, oh, they're so perfect. Look at them getting everything done. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Look at them cooking that thing from scratch. Look at them doing that other thing. I'd like to watch YouTube videos, or I don't do much Instagram scrolling, but a little bit of Instagram of mothers who I find very inspirational. And I'm like, wow, I love the way that you show up for your kids or your family, or at least the way that you choose to portray it on social media, because I don't live in your house. I don't know if that's real.
Yeah, I must say I've also there's 2 or 3 podcasts that I found this year that also feel like that to me. It just feels in a way like I'm connecting with other moms and just hearing their experience, and that I've also found really helpful just to listen and get inspired, like you said, and actually use that as a way to reflect on what I'm doing and my choices and where I can improve. But in saying that, we were actually just talking about this before we started recording, is also being mindful where consuming content is becoming almost a form of dissociation. Because I think that something that we forget to do in this idea of sort of making time for yourself, like, yes, it's lovely to read or watch a YouTube video or actually just sit with ourselves without any content. Just sit with where you're feeling, what's coming up what's coming up for you. And I think that we underestimate that in motherhood, we have big feelings that come up for us. It could be triggered by our childhood. It could be triggered by, maybe things that we're holding on to, expectations that we have that aren't going to plan. All these different things come up for us. And I think it's so important to feel into them, because I think that's the way we process our things. And so often, I know I used to do this, would be to, do a meditation or to do a yoga session or something to just sort of calm myself, which I think definitely has a time and a place. But I was using that actually to distract. I only this year really learned the skill of just sitting with myself, just sitting, no guided meditation, no anything, and actually just thinking, what's coming up for me. And oftentimes that results in a big cry. Oftentimes I'll end up just tears bawling out my eyes. I've got my baby like napping in my lap, and I'm like bawling my eyes out just because a lot came up for me and a lot of feelings going on. And it just, I think a good cry is one of the healthiest things you can do in motherhood. It just releases so much tension, so much stress from your body, processes a lot of internal trauma that you might be holding on to. So yeah, take time to just sit with yourself and have a good cry if you need to.
Yeah. I think that the constant content, even the information-based content, is robbing us of the life where you just get to be uncomfortable. And the experience of something uncomfortable is a human experience that is necessary. So a habit that I've gotten into is check yourself. When that discomfort comes up and you immediately pick up your phone to scroll, to do something, even to put like a self-help podcast on, because that's going to give me that little rush, like, oh, I made it better. I listened to this podcast or this chat. Check yourself. Just try really hard. Give it a minute, give it 2 minutes to be with that discomfort, because that is something that I want to do for my kid. Is I want her to be able to feel uncomfortable feelings, and I sit with her and I speak through them. Even when I watch her try to have these control patterns and distract, that's language that features in the aware parenting, I'm here, I'm listening paradigm. But I watch her struggle to be with an uncomfortable feeling, and that I want her to be able to feel uncomfortable feelings and know that it is okay to feel them and that they have value in our life if we are able to sit with them and to feel them. And that is the gift that I then give myself to do that. So a habit there is to watch. Are you filling up your life with constant, like, be a better mom content? Funny because this is the content we're making. But instead of taking the time to really reflect on what did I read, what did I listen to, what am I experiencing? The goal is not how fast can I get through every self-help bit of content. It is how can I implement this in my life to have a more thriving experience.
The portal for growth, like sitting in that discomfort and moving through it without distracting from it. That is where so much personal growth lies.
So much.
And yeah, I think in a way my daughter has been my biggest teacher in that, because kids, they feel they feels. They have their big cries. And like I said, having a big cry, that's not something that, before this year I would have thought, oh, that's a help tip I'll give someone, have a good cry every now and then. But this year I'm like, if you had to ask me for a good help tip, I would be like, when last did you have a good cry?
Like a really good cry. Yeah. It's profound. But that kind of brings me into a slightly lighter habit. And that is a health habit and also a mom habit, I think, is cook your food from scratch. And I know that sounds like maybe counterproductive because in motherhood, we don't always have a lot of time. But whatever you can cook from scratch, I highly recommend it. Peel those potatoes, cut those 5,000 apples to make the applesauce. Do those things because not only is that usually healthier for your family, and I also feel like it's very wholesome, like seeing where the elements of your food comes from and a skill set to have. It is very meditative to have nothing on, just to have your kid be playing there or helping you, and you're doing this repetitive task with your hands, watching your thoughts come and go, and just being in that moment has been something you would have never seen me do prior to motherhood. Like, I'd be like, no, it's such a waste of time. Buy that stuff pre-cut. Now I'm like, I'm going to stand there and peel it and cut it and be with my thoughts.
Yeah, I love that. And on the topic of food, I think that's also where a lot of moms, because parenting is hectic, it's crazy. Having time to cook always isn't always accessible to people. And so a tip that I give my nutrition clients that I work with is plan your meals on a Saturday or Sunday or whenever before you do your grocery shopping. Just write out the week. What am I having for dinner? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Just so you have an idea of what food is happening for your family that week, because I think we tend to put food sort of at the back thinking, oh, we'll get to it when we'll make a plan.
Yeah.
And a mom who is nourished is able to show up for her family so much better. I think we often forget the role that food plays in helping us regulate ourselves, helping us stay calm and grounded in moments of when you just want to lose it. I think that food really is the way that our bodies can actually deal with the overwhelm of motherhood. Those nutrients are the building blocks for our thoughts to process efficiently, for our nervous systems to be able to be regulated. So really, really planning your meals, planning your groceries that you're going to buy. And yeah, I think that is such an overlooked tip. It's just so important.
Yeah, and if you want an adaptation of that works for me, because I'm someone who doesn't thrive off of like very strict planning. I plan, that we can chat about that as a separate tip, but I like a bit of flexibility. So how I do what Jacqui just suggested is I plan our protein, our meat, our main component of dinner. That's what I've got in my mind. Okay, so we're having ground beef and organ on Monday, then we have pork, then we have like lamb, then we have chicken. And I usually know the sides that I like to make with those foods. But for me, it's very helpful to just be like, okay, I've got the main component and the whatever else I'll figure out on the day. Unless obviously that then causes you some kind of stress or is taking away from your energy, then implement it more strictly, like the way that Jacqui spoke, or like a meal rotation. But I think what will be great, Jacqui, is if now we quickly share a few tips around how do we cook food and make food and do things that are healthy for our family. And one of them, I'm going to steal Jacqui's tip because I learned this from Jacqui, is use your Instant Pot. And if you don't have an Instant Pot, get an Instant Pot. First of all, they're made of stainless steel. So great, healthy way to cook your meals. And I love it for a baby and a toddler, because what I used to find difficult when I used to baby carry a lot is I don't want to be by the stove. I didn't want there to be a fear of like she could touch something hot. And the Instant Pot is a game changer. Just put that lid and you shut it. Jacqui, I think that you have a recipe book for like Instant Pot meals.
I specifically created this recipe book for people who either don't actually like cooking at all, or for people who don't have time to cook. And every recipe in that recipe book is sort of a dump and go meal. So just put all the ingredients in, turn the lid on and put it on. Because even with the Instant Pot, some recipes you find online can be still quite tedious because you need to change settings and saute and then add things at different times and whatever. So I created this book just to be able to put all the ingredients in, put the lid on and turn it on. And what I love about that is if you've got a gap of time at say 2 p.m., you can do that. And then it just does its thing, puts on keep warm mode. And if you want to eat at 6 or 7 p.m., it's just there. It's waiting. It's ready for you. So I often do that when I get a gap in my day, and maybe especially when my daughter is just playing sort of independently and she's happy to be on her own, I'll quickly go and put everything in the Instant Pot. And then I just know, okay, that part of my day is sorted. It's done. Dinner's ready when we are ready to eat.
I love that. I love that you can cook it at a different time. The other thing that I use my Instant Pot for that I found valuable in our motherhood journey, the health approach that I subscribe to is that root vegetables need to be cooked really, really well. Now, I love having them with fat. I think it's also a healthier way to have them. So I typically will like roast our butternut and our potatoes and our sweet potatoes in some coconut oil in the oven. Now that's very time consuming and often you have to check on it. Often I'm opening up a really hot oven, which I don't enjoy to do around a baby or a toddler. So what I started doing is I cook those in the Instant Pot so that they're fully cooked, chuck them in the oven to just get them like a nice crispy color at the end there. And that has worked really well for me to not have to be constantly touching that food while being with my child.
Yeah, and you could even do that first step in batch. You could batch cook a whole bunch of sweet potatoes and then use that like 2 or 3 times in the week.
Yeah. So that's my other tip for dinner, but this may not work for everybody else, but this works for me, is I do not cook from scratch every single night. That would be too tiring for me, or at least I don't cook the main components from scratch every single night. So when I cook a meat, our protein, I typically cook enough for 2 meals. So Monday and Tuesday, we are having ground beef with the organ blend. Now on Monday, we'll have it maybe with like a pasta or a sauce. And then on Tuesday, I will do it with something else, like some other kind of side. And that really works for me because I find it very tiring if I'm doing an entire cook from scratch for 2 dinners in a row. And I like it when our second night is a little bit less hands-on in the kitchen and a little bit more family time, because that's typically the time my husband ends work. Then we can spend a bit more time together and I'm not so focused in the kitchen.
Yeah, I like that. That's a tip that I often give to my clients is, here, I'll cook once, eat twice, even 3 times, which is really helpful. I tend to cook every night from scratch, but I'll always have that for lunch the next day. So we'll have dinner and lunch. So that it is, we're getting two meals out of it, which tends to make lunch a lot easier because I find that people also struggle with lunch, struggle with knowing what to eat for lunch.
I do struggle with knowing what to eat for lunch for sure. So that's another thing is, remember, it's not just cooking dinner from scratch, because we're typically doing 3 meals a day. We want to be doing 3 good meals a day. So one of the requests that I pose to my husband is that he takes over a lot of the breakfast stuff, because then it's one less meal that I'm cooking. Remember, if cooking's your thing and you thrive off that and you love to live in the kitchen, then this is different for you. It's not for me. I just like us to be healthy. So in the morning, he may take over the element of making one of the things that we have for breakfast. And then lunch, I do like it to be leftovers. And lunch is something that I need to think about because, like Jacqui said, I'm one of those people where it's quite easy to forget about what to have for lunch. But one of the game changers for me currently is making my own sourdough and then making French toast, because another one that I always struggle with is eating enough eggs. So that's the way that we've been incorporating eating more eggs in our home.
Yeah, I think focusing on those nutrient-dense foods is so helpful because breastfeeding is incredibly nutrient demanding on the body. And nourishing yourself well is so important because if a breastfeeding mom is not getting the nutrients she needs from her diet, your body will stop pulling it from your reserves. Your body will stop pulling it from your bones, pulling it from your organs, and it comes at the sacrifice of your health. And a lot of breastfeeding moms do start struggling with their health, with very thinning hair, with feeling fragile, feeling fatigued all the time. And so really focusing on those nutrient-dense foods can be so helpful. And the top foods I would consider sort of those really nutrient-dense foods that you want to get in is eggs, definitely. I think that 2 to 3 eggs, especially the yolks a day, is just such a nice way to meet that high nutrient demand.
Yeah.
You mentioned you have the organ, ground into your ground beef sometimes. I think sprinkling in some organ meats from time to time can be really, really helpful. And then I'm a huge fan of dairy. I know it's not for everyone. It's a bit sometimes controversial, but for a breastfeeding mom, it is, for me, that is my easiest go-to is drinking lots of milk. Milk is so incredibly nutrient dense, and it's the perfect thing that my body needs to make enough breast milk. So I often just have a glass of milk, and I know that I'm ticking so many of my nutrition boxes with that.
Yeah. So with breastfeeding, I think there's a few more tips that we can give here. One of the things, quick, my husband batch makes broth. I think that's another one that's great to have, especially in the colder months. We always have a big stash of broth, and just heating up that and having that in a mug is fantastic. Luckily for me, my kid also loves broth. So that's a nice and easy one. But dairy also, as a breastfeeding mom, I was one of those people who didn't realize how much more I needed to consume while breastfeeding. And I had an adjustment period that was a bit difficult for me. So I lost a lot of weight. I think when Elbow was around 9 or 10 months old, and in a bad way, where your muscle mass is starting to decline and so forth. But one of the things that my husband did that was super helpful for me is every single morning he would make me a milky cacao, and in it he would load it up with a bunch of things. I think he put taurine in it and collagen and maybe colostrum even. I don't remember everything, but I will link that down below. And that's the thing that I had first thing in the morning. He would bring that up to me when I was still in the room before I got a chance to get to the kitchen, because I like to get ready first and then go down. So there's ways that you could strategize to just get that hearty beverage in if you're not able to get food in the morning, especially if me, you're breastfeeding through the night. It's a really good idea to try get something in quite quickly once you wake up in the morning.
Yeah, that's a really great idea. And yeah, I've seen so many breastfeeding moms really, really struggling to get enough food. And it's such a different way of thinking of it, because most people think of nutrition and they just automatically think, oh, I eat too much, I need to eat less, need to worry about how much I'm eating. But I really think changing that focus to how can I nourish my body and support my body is so important.
Yeah. And then I want to link it to the female cycle, but if your cycle hasn't returned yet as a mother, it's still valuable. But one of the things that I have with breastfeeding is that I crave a lot of food. So I started doing this thing that I call them my breastfeeding snacks. And I actually made what maybe other people would consider as unhealthy snack. I think they're healthy, but cookies and shortbread biscuits. Shortbread is basically a lot of flour, but so much butter, so much butter. And for me, that's something that I consider good to have. I would literally make these like breastfeeding treats so that I could eat them throughout the day and even right before I went to bed to have something. And I felt like that is what my body was craving. But now that my cycle has returned, I have very specific cravings and I don't want to eat things that have ingredients in that I don't like. So knowing that that craving is going to come about, I preempt that a lot of the time and I make a healthy version of what I deem a healthy version of that craving. So I know in my luteal phase, I often have this craving for like a chocolatey, sugary kind of treat. So I will make one where I source the ingredients that I'm happy with, my organic flour, my organic sugar, like all of those things, no preservatives, no random additives in that snack, and have it on hand. Otherwise, the craving is going to be so intense, I'm probably just going to default to eating some like Oreos or something I really would rather not eat. And in my follicular phase, I don't crave those things. I more crave like something salty, like crisps. But again, I don't want to eat Lay's. So what do? I either make something that is salty or I have on hand a crisp version that is cooked in an oil and has ingredients that I feel good about consuming. And knowing I'm going to crave those things, I have them in my home so that I don't default to buying something that I don't really want to consume.
Yeah, I love that strategy. And again, it just comes down to just a little bit of plan. You've actually preempted that and you've made those cookies, you've made those crisps, or you've made whatever healthy snack that works for you. I often like batch cook a lot of oats. I like having like really milky oats. So that's something like I'll batch cook in advance. And yeah, it's just so helpful when you're hungry and you're busy that you've got those things, they're ready, they're there for you, they're waiting.
Okay, so that is something I want to do. All right, Jacqui, let's quickly list off the things that we typically batch cook. So far we've mentioned we do broth and you do oats. What is something else that you cook in bulk that you find useful to have in your home?
Whenever I cook mince, I cook a lot, or ground beef, just because it's easy. It's easy to make if you're making the recipe that says 4, it's easy to make the recipe that says 8 or even 12. It's just an easy thing. So I always make, whenever I cook ground beef, I make a lot. And I find for us that especially helps on the weekends, because the weekends, I don't plan our meals as much because sometimes we're out and about. Sometimes, we're visiting family and we have meals. And then oftentimes on a Saturday at like 5, 6 p.m., we're like, oh, what are we doing for dinner? Yeah. And then I've got ground beef in the freezer. I just need to take it out. And then even doing like some mince on sourdough toast or making like a, sweet potato to go with that. It's just super, super easy. So ground beef is an easy one. So you do them in batch.
Yeah. Also, on that note of my meal planning, Saturday was always our flexible day. We didn't have like a specific meal on Saturday. So that thing does happen, which Jack said. But one of the things that we bulk cook, or I bulk cook, is rice, because I soak rice for a long time before I cook it. And then I cook it really like slowly, make sure it's like really well cooked. So it's not like usually someone else rice might be something easy to make. But for me, rice is a whole thing of like remembering to soak it and so forth. So rice, and then freeze a frozen portion of cooked rice and then heat it up in broth.
Okay, good idea. I've never actually thought of that. Another thing I cook in bulk is mushrooms. So, mushrooms are a really, really great tool. Firstly for your gut health, they're really, really great. They are supportive of hormone health, because they are a natural aromatase inhibitor, so can help if you've got symptoms of estrogen dominance. And they're pretty nutrient dense as well. But ideally, if we want to cook mushrooms, we want to boil them for a long amount of time. I'd say at least an hour. Some people say up to 3 hours. I don't know if that's necessary, but I always do at least an hour, half an hour to an hour. And that's not something you want to do every single time you eat mushrooms, especially if I eat mushrooms daily. So I get like 3 or 4 punnets of mushrooms that I slice up and just boil all at once and put them in the fridge and then eat that throughout the week.
I love it. We do exactly the same. So I buy like a whole bunch of mushrooms and then I will chop them up, and we're the people who boil them for 3 hours. So probably not necessary. but we do boil them for 3 hours. And then I've always got in the fridge a bunch of containers, and I like to heat them up in butter mostly for Ian and Alba. I don't really enjoy eating the mushrooms. I wish I did, but yeah. Batch cook the mushrooms. The other thing we do, it's not a specific meal per se, but if I'm going to go all out and make like a really elaborate type of meal, the one that's coming to mind for me is Ian loves lasagna. So for his birthday, I made this like huge lasagna. Now, lasagna's got a lot of layers. Takes a lot of time to make like a proper lasagna. And I made this really big portion of it, and we froze enough for, I think it was something like 10 different dinners, because I accidentally made this huge lasagna. And it was so great to have that in the freezer for those days, like the Saturday, we're like, oh, what are we having today? Or the days where you're like, oh, this was such a hectic day, I really don't feel like cooking, is to just have like a few of those that you can just take out of the freezer and heat up. And that is the dinner that you do. And I learned that from our first 40-day prep, because then you're prepping the kind of hearty meals that you can just take out the freezer. I think it's a good habit to just have a few meals in your freezer that like you literally don't have to do anything other than put it in the oven and heat them.
Yeah, it's super, super helpful to have that. Then one thing I also batch cook and I actually freeze these is some of the muffins that I make. So the main ingredients are oats and bananas, and it's got like some eggs and a few other ingredients, but they're quite simple, but they're just, they're such a nice snack to have. And I'll make like 2 or 3 trays, like 12 muffin trays. Just because if I'm like making dishes and everything, I'm like, well, then I may as well make loads of it. And then I like to keep them in the freezer because they're quite easy. I just take one out typically the night before, so it will just defrost overnight, and I know that I've got it the next day, and that's an easy snack in the day.
Yeah. And then talking about batch cooking, because obviously for batch cooking, something that you need to heat up. One of the things that we fell a bit off of the wagon with when we became parents, but we did really well before we were parents, is we didn't use a microwave before we were parents. Like, I know that there's a lot of like, not everybody agrees, like, is a microwave bad for you, good for you, wada, wada, wada. But I do think like it's not the most nutritional way to like heat up your food, irrespective of all the other things. So one of the things that we did, and I was like, I need to figure out a way that we're still conveniently able to eat and reheat food, but not necessarily the microwave, because I don't want to just take away the microwave and now I'm stuck like making all my meals from scratch, and then we end up like not eating because I'm having a hard time trying to reheat food, etc., etc. I think eating something that's less ideal is better than not eating. But I solved our problem recently, and I bought a toaster oven. Didn't actually know that that was a thing until recently, but it is stainless steel inside, and it heats up food really, really quickly. And it is working so well for us as an alternative to the microwave to heat up food and not need to run my big oven, which again is close to my toddler. And I don't like to watch with that because the toaster oven is on top of the counter. A lot more safe and a lot more easy for me with motherhood.
Okay, I need to try that. I'm not yet convinced that a microwave is bad for us. I haven't seen enough evidence. From a nutrition perspective, the nutrients they're actually pretty good. They've compared like boiling versus roasting versus microwaving veggies, for example, and microwaving actually preserves nutrients pretty well.
Good to know.
The other people are concerned about is more the radiation, especially if you're standing outside it. Like they always say, don't stand with your pregnant belly by the microwave. I think that's potentially the concern, and that's why I wouldn't like look into a microwave when it's on, or stand really close to it, or have my daughter be close to a microwave. So maybe that's where I would go. But I must say I do rely on my microwave quite a bit, especially.
Well, I feel better about it now because I did for like the first year and however long of parenting. I was like a big reliance on our microwave to reheat food. But yeah, if you so feel an alternative is a toaster oven, that's working really well for us. But like you, I'm not entirely convinced I know where I stand with the microwave stuff, but I do feel better because our toaster oven is also an air fryer that's not plastic. So most air fryers are the part you put your food in is plastic. And I love that this one is entirely stainless steel inside, and the thing that the food is going on is stainless steel.
Yeah, that's actually a really great tip. That's the one thing that's prevented me money from buying an air fryer.
Yeah, me too. Honestly, that's always why I didn't get an air fryer. So, okay, let's pivot slightly from that to another healthy habit that I was thinking is, are there things in your home that you can replace? It is within your budget, or, you can wait and do it in a time that works for you, that is the healthier alternative to what you currently have, and it doesn't require additional effort from your side. So one of the things that I did this year, and it is an expensive item, so it did take a while to do, but I was inspired from Jacqui to do this, is sleeping. When we are sleeping, you are just sleeping, but is the surface that you're sleeping on a healthy surface, or is that surface disrupting your hormones? Now, conventional mattresses are not great, and that's actually in our course, by the way, which inspired me to do this. At a time when it worked for our family and our budget, I replaced our mattress with one that does not have a flame retardant. The way that it is safe from fires is the surface is wool. So our mattress currently now is a fully organic mattress. So the same with the toaster oven. Are there things in your home that, when it's within your budget and okay to do, because this stuff can become expensive and overwhelming and not fun, can you replace it? And those things don't require any additional effort from your side, simply to be healthier in your home.
Yeah, I like the way you phrased that, because I think that fear is also worse for the body than necessarily those chemicals that we might be exposing ourselves to. So I always tell people, our bodies are resilient. Our bodies are amazing at detoxing when they have the right tools to do so. So don't walk around your house in fear of everything. But like you said, when you've got the budget to, and as you need to replace things, think of the best thing that you can possibly replace it with. So I would say the number one thing I would focus on is any cleaning products in your house. That I think that's quite important, because that's typically affordable for people. You're going to replace, you're going to run out and have to replace those pretty quickly. So I think that's quite an easy one to do. And yeah, looking for non-toxic alternatives, I think is really important. I think we don't often realize that constant brain fog or headache or irritability we have might be inhaling these chemicals all the time.
All right, let's change topics again. With motherhood, there's a lot of picking up your child. There's a lot more movement than my lifestyle before I had a baby. Jacqui, is there any wisdom that you can share on how do we ensure that our body is in the best condition while we are doing motherhood?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because earlier you mentioned muscle wasting, and that is something that happens to a lot of moms. Because like you said, when we're breastfeeding, if we're not fueling adequately, our body will start pulling from our muscle reserves. And a lot of moms talk about how they'll get the mom bum. They'll go from having like strong glutes to just like a completely flat bum, and your body is pulling on whatever reserves. You can see that in many parts of your body. And muscle is so important. I like the saying I've heard, muscle is the organ of longevity. It's incredibly important. The more muscle mass we have, the more insulin sensitive we are, the better hormonal balance we have. It's so important to preserve our muscle mass. I think it's one of the most important things we can do for our health. And I think that in motherhood, you naturally use your muscles a lot, because you're picking up a baby, you're walking around with a baby, your baby's getting heavier and heavier every single day. And yeah, I think you are using your muscles a lot, but I am quite a big fan of doing some targeted strength training to support your body. So I think that can look different depending on your situation and your capacity. It can be as simple as, maybe signing up to an online program and just doing a 10-minute session every day with your laptop. If you're someone who wants to work with someone, signing up with a personal trainer or something. But I think even small things, a tip I often give to my clients is like, just have some resistance bands in your house. There are plenty of really good resistance band exercises that you can do, and you can do some really good workouts with the resistance bands. And a tip that I give, which I do myself, is actually scatter some resistance bands throughout the house, because then you see it and then you can stop and do a few exercises. So I think that just stimulating that muscle is really, really important and really healthy for you.
That's important. I would like to incorporate more of that into my life. I know that I have not made explicit time for strength-based exercises the way that I used to before I became a mother. So that is very helpful for me, and I plan to implement that. The tip that I want to share, but this is not an easy thing to change and it kind of takes a lot of buy-in, but it was recently discussed on the 1,000 Hours Outside group, and I just wanted to share this. So before we had a kid, Ian and I discussed a lot of how is your home structured for your lifestyle. And we spoke a lot about wanting to get a floor bed, a firm bed, like not really having couches, like sitting on the floor eating, so that you get up and you get down. And modern furniture is really made for you to kind of sink into it. And a lot of people think that that's comfortable, but then your body is not, it's being very passive. It's like forming to that thing as opposed to like holding yourself up and so forth. So once we had a kid, it became so natural for us to get rid of our furniture because I didn't enjoy my baby wanting to climb on things and having that in my home. I realized like the life I want for her. And from a child development perspective, actually, when my mom was doing that, this is a tip she used to tell parents is get down on your child's level and play with them on the floor. So it just kind of came naturally to us. So our home is structured in a way that we are constantly needing to move our body in a way that is better for the body. So our bed is on the floor. We do not have a normal couch. We only have firm play couches that are very low to the ground. And we spend a lot of our time getting up and down off of the floor, not sinking into some like kind of cushy couch, which might feel good in that moment, but it's not that good for your body.
Yeah, that is such a good tip. Getting up and down is off the floor. I think that functional movement is so important. Because yeah, I think with, like I mentioned, the strength training is helpful to preserve muscle mass. But sometimes, even people who do strength training and have a lot of muscle, they're not necessarily like functionally fit.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it is important to incorporate that into daily life. Get up and down off the floor. Just even like crawl with your baby, crawl around. Things like that, I think are so good for your body.
Another thing that you can replace when you feel like it or want to, that I don't think requires active effort from you as a parent, but contributes to the way that you move, is to change out your shoes for barefoot shoes or to be barefoot as much as possible. Because in motherhood, a lot of the tips are just general health tips, but what are the things that you can do that does not require active effort from your part? Wear shoes that are better for your movement. I mean, I definitely don't want to be carrying my baby wearing heels, but luckily I stopped wearing heels long before I had a baby. But I cannot see myself wanting to do that. Like here in Calgary, when there's ice outside, imagine me no, it's not happening. But being barefoot as much as possible and touching the ground with your bare feet is something that you can change that does not require additional effort. But yeah, getting barefoot shoes might be like a emotional thing that you have to go through to transition, but it's addictive. I promise you that it is addictive. Like when you get that first pair, you're probably going to want to get some more of them.
And putting yourself into like a pair of pants or something after a year of being barefoot shoes, you will die. You will think that you're strangling your feet.
It's so bad. I really struggle. I'm having barefoot snow boots made, but when I wear my normal snow boots, it is so hard for me. I'm like, oh, this is horrible. This did not feel good for my foot. But also on that note, another tip, sorry, Jacqui, then we move to you, is baby carrying is a great way to keep that connection with your baby and to do other things. But one of the tips that I want to give parents is take the time to learn to do it properly. This is good for your baby, but this is also good for you. One of my sort of pet peeves is seeing people baby carry in a way that is not good for your baby, but it's also not good for your body. If your carrier is too low, it is not good for your body. The weight needs to be distributed well. If that carrier is not working for you and your baby, go to a baby carrying group. They're free most of the time. You can try on different carriers. You can get an expert who can help you. A lot of this stuff is free, where you can learn to carry in a way that best serves your body and your baby, such that you are not compromising your physical state to carry around your baby.
Yeah, I definitely learned that the hard way. My first carrier was just finding like I was just getting so much tension in my back and my neck, and I just thought this is not shouldn't be right. And I just actually went to their shop. And the carrier itself is fine. It's just a few, even just a few minor settings that I adjusted made such a big difference. So you don't have to suffer. Wearing your baby shouldn't be incredibly uncomfortable. And yeah, I think back tension. Actually, it's interesting. I know we've spoken about this before, but it's something I struggled with so much before motherhood. And it's something I actually have way less of after motherhood. And I think it's because I used to sit on my computer a lot more. These days, I don't sit on my computer nearly as much. And yeah, I don't get that back and neck stiffness and tension as much anymore. But I think that, yeah, if you're having that, looking into your career, and looking for other ways that you can support your body is so, so important.
Mm. And if there's a specific movement you're doing with your kid a lot, learn how to do that movement properly. Learn how to use the muscles. Because I remember when I was pregnant, I went to like a physio that specializes in pregnancy and after birth and all that. And she was like teaching me, the way that you bend to put a child into the crib. We don't have a crib, so that was never relevant for my parenting journey, that particular movement. But if you are, because I know a lot of mothers who have hurt themselves with the movement of putting your baby down. So if that's something that you're doing a lot, take the time to learn to do it in a way that is best for your body, because you're doing that movement anyway. So just to prevent injury, to prevent repetitive, like hurting your body, that I think is worth doing. Right, I want to pivot again. Sorry for all the jumping around topics. I feel like we're just jam packing this video with like tips on all areas of motherhood. I've got a question for Jacqui. Right now, we spoke about cooking from scratch, etc., etc. And as a nutrition expert, realistically, in the world that we live today, yes, I want to get everything from food, but that's just it's not always possible. It's not always the best way because maybe I'm in a deprived state, etc., etc. So supplementation. I understand that this is very unique to different requirements that different people have and so forth. But if we can try to, in a general way, what would be, you can pick maybe 3 or just 1 or however many, what would be the recommended supplement, be it a whole food supplement or a different type of supplement, that you think that most mothers would benefit from incorporating into their lives?
Yeah, it does need to be personalized and nuanced. So yeah, it's in talking with my clients, that's when, we can see what supplements might be potentially helpful. The general advice I give is to just, everyone hates it when I say this, but just just track 1 day of your food in Chronometer. Even if you just put a typical day, even if it's not perfect, ideally try to do, a few days, but see what nutrients you're missing. I see a lot of women who are not getting enough folate in their diets. A lot of women don't get enough zinc in their diet. A lot of women don't get enough potassium. So you need to create that awareness firstly to see, where are your shortfalls in your diet. And then as much as possible, I would try and eat the whole foods. So that's a nice thing about tracking as well. And app like Chronometer, it also teaches you about what foods contain. So if you see, oh, I'm low in zinc, you can click on zinc and it'll show you this is where you get most of your zinc from. And that's a way to start learning. And what I help my clients do is say, let's fill that to whole foods as much as possible. So I think you can meet most of your RDAs through whole foods, but some women are quite depleted overall and they actually need more than the RDAs. They benefit from more than the RDAs. Some women are showing particular symptoms that indicate that they might need more of a certain nutrient. So I do think that sort of a multi-type supplement can actually be helpful for a lot of women. So, generally it is recommended to supplement the prenatal while you are breastfeeding. Usually people recommend to carry on supplementing it into breastfeeding. And I think that in general can be quite good advice just because breastfeeding is incredibly nutrient demanding, and to meet all your needs, the whole foods alone can be quite difficult. It's very intentional to do that. And even I struggle with that from time to time. So I think taking like a good quality multi-supplement is not necessarily a bad idea. The part where I have issue in most supplements on the market is the quality of it. Um, so I look at the forms of nutrients. Are they in the most bioavailable form that your body can absorb and utilize? The ratios between nutrients, so certain minerals and vitamins need to be in good ratio to each other. So I have 2 or 3 brands that I'll recommend to someone who I think could benefit from like a prenatal or a multi. And I do think that can be incredibly helpful sometimes.
Yeah. Also, just want to plug this in here. We did develop a course that is so valuable for women, not a thing down below. And if you found value in what Jacqui just said, you're going to find a lot of value in that course. And that's going to cover a lot of ways that you can support your body to be your best self. Because what we're discussing in this video is you kind of want to be supporting your body from many different avenues, or supporting yourself as a mother from many different approaches to be your best self for your kid.
Yeah, in our course, I go through, all the nutrients, how to make that through whole foods, how to, use food to support your gut health, use food to support your hormonal health. So yeah, I definitely think that is a worthwhile investment. And then for supplement recommendations, I think more one-on-one support is best there.
That makes sense. Right. In this video, we've discussed like a lot of things. And then maybe you might be feeling like, no, where am I going to have time to incorporate that? Like, I'm already doing so much, like I'm overstimulated. And by the way, if you're sensitive like me, I think loads of mothers, even if you're not sensitive, overstimulation is like a real challenge in motherhood. So that's something that I think that we should be mindful of. But I think we have a couple of tips around that. Now, one of the tips that I want to share probably doesn't help so much with that, but that's why those tips are going to become relevant. And the big thing that I want to share that's been so life enriching for me is involving my kid in life with me. Now, I often find that, that tip, like sleep when your kid sleeps, and then someone's like, oh, okay, cool. Then, when will I do the laundry, or when will I make food? I am a believer of sleep when your kid sleeps if you're tired and you need to sleep. And the time I do laundry is when she's awake. I don't do laundry when my child is sleeping. That's something she can do with me. It's so easy for her to do that activity with me, and she loves doing it with me. Does it take longer because she's doing it with me? Sure. But it's fun. And I've watched her learn and grow and enjoy hanging up the stuff and folding the things and packing them away. My child knows how to unpack our dishwasher, the safe parts, obviously, because we did that thing of it. It took long when she was little and it was hard and I was scared she was going to like clean the water of the dishwasher, and it wasn't that easy. But you do life with your kid and so quickly you will blink and they will know how to do those things. And it won't be this whole thing of like, oh, it takes 10 years to unpack the dishwasher because my very small baby who could barely lift a plate is trying to help me. Next thing you know, I've got a toddler who's putting the things away where they go, because you take that time to do life with your kid. Like that would be my biggest tip and the biggest life enriching thing. Do life with your kid. Don't say, okay, I'm going to put you over there and then I'm going to make food. Allow them to participate to whatever degree is appropriate for their age. And if it's not safe, like we said, Instant Pot or do different things to try to make it safe. Like with the dishwasher, always unpack the knives first so that what's left is spoons, which is safe for her to unpack.
Yeah, I love that tip, because I think we feel so overwhelmed because we think there's so much to do, because taking care of your kid, people associate it with just, playing or doing activities for them or taking them places or doing things. But I think for them, doing life with you is the play, is the activity, is the thing that they want to do. I think that kids love participating in doing what you're doing and helping where they can. So that was a huge thing for me as well. It just felt really calming to think I don't have to take care of my daughter and find time to do laundry and find time to unpack the dishwasher and it's like, how it's impossible. How you can't do all those things in the day if you see them as separate tasks. So I think it can be really calming and a big weight off your shoulders just to have that mentality of do life together.
Yeah. And I think if you start to have the mentality of like, learning is just doing life, we don't have to like separate it, the way we did typically in schools, like that's that subject, that's that thing. Like it's just part of life. Then I don't feel the need to fill up my child's schedule with like scheduled toddler activities. Like we don't do those things. I don't even feel pressure when other moms are like, okay, on Tuesday we do this at the library, on Wednesday we do that. I don't do that because she's doing life with me and she learns so much about life just doing it with me. We go to a grocery store where they have toddler carts and she pushes that cart around and she's learning and it's fun when we do those things together. So I feel like we need to kind of have a mindset shift of we have to do activities because this is life. It's not get your chores done and then you live. Everyday things is your life. Now, in saying all of that, for me, the biggest challenge to doing life with my kid is managing my energy and how overstimulated I am and making the choices based off of that. So on a day that I'm very overstimulated, my energy is very low, I am going to request of my daughter not to unpack the dishwasher with me. And I'm going to want to do that by myself. Now, I want to limit that asking her not to do that with me, but in the same time respecting when it's best for me to just do that activity by myself. So what are ways that we can lower feeling overstimulated and gain back energy? We've mentioned several of them in this video, but let's specifically chat about that. Jacqui, is there any wisdom that you have to share in that regard?
I think that we live in this era of constantly consuming new information. And it's completely abnormal. It's not, I don't think that our nervous systems are equipped to deal with a constant influx of new information. On one hand, Google something and have this new knowledge. On the other hand, do you need to quickly Google that thing and have that new knowledge? Do you really need to? I think that every time you have the urge to, let me quickly Google this or let me check online or, just question, do I need to? Because even though it's interesting and maybe it's enriching to you to have that knowledge, it's still new information that you have to process, which, like you said, it takes away, it drains. It is in a way draining because you need to process that information. Now you've taken away your capacity to, do things with your child. So that's something I think we can become a little bit more aware of, like, do you always need to know that thing that you think you need to Google?
That's been so helpful in my life, is saying, I don't need that information right now. I can get it later. I can do that thing later. And I think this brings us back to that awareness of yourself. Like, are you aware in a moment when you are starting to feel that overstimulation come up? Can you do things in that moment to lessen that? So a big one for me, we have 2 robot vacuums so that I don't have to vacuum often. I find that on some days, if that thing is going and that sound is going along with my toddler, along with all the things that I'm doing, that for me is not a calming environment. So I will turn that thing off and make sure it goes at a time that I'm out of the house or I'm not near it, because I find that so overstimulating along with other stuff. Especially sometimes Elba wants to listen to music while there's a lot going on. I will request of her that for now, while I'm speaking and doing this, if we don't listen to music along with all this other stuff, I'll finish this up and then we put the music on. We don't want 5 million things going at the same time. I want to manage the amount of stimulus my body is needing to take in and to process in any given time.
Yeah, I like that. Just taking sort of inventory of what stimulation is your body currently going through, because some things might be a little bit unconscious, it might be background noise, all these things. And I think they definitely add up. And yeah, if you can take those preemptive steps, you don't have to get to that point where you just kind of explode because it's just too much to handle all those things. I think that's a really great way of thinking about it.
Yeah. And 2 big ways that I do that is if I get to a point where I am already overstimulated and it's a lot, and you're like, oh, I have so much to do. I don't care. We're putting it down and we're going for a walk outside. Like, It might seem like that's, oh no, that's an additional thing we can't be doing right now. That walk outside is going to be so good for everybody. And even it's really cold right now where I am, even if it's like 3 minutes outside to breathe some fresh air, some nature, some perspective, it makes a major change to my stuff. And then the other one is a room reset. I reset our play area as soon as I'm feeling, oh, it's a bit much and there's stuff everywhere. Game changer. It takes me like less than 2 minutes to do. And I feel so good when it's done. So much more calm, so much more present.
Yeah, I love those. My go-to is there's a beautiful park just right next to where I live, with some nice big trees that provide really nice shade and just flowers, and it's really beautiful. So yeah, when I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, then Leah and I just go over there with a picnic blanket, and we put it out, and I specifically don't take my phone. That is my number one rule is I don't take my phone when I go there. And I put the picnic blanket out, and I just I just love to lie on the picnic blanket and look at the trees above me. And yeah, I just love that because I mean there's so much for a baby or a toddler to entertain themselves with outside, feeling the grass, looking at flowers and everything. So I love that like, moment of peace just to sit and hear the birds chirping and feel the breeze on my skin. And there's nothing else that I need to focus on in that moment.
Yeah, I love that. I think a big part of motherhood is like reframing and looking at the beauty of things and just coming back to that present moment when we're feeling a bit all over the place. And that's probably another tip that I'd like to share is when it's hard, bring yourself back to gratitude. Now, I know that might sound so cliche and you're like, oh, everybody said. It's so simple because it works. On the hardest days, I literally say to myself, I get to do this. I get to do this hard. I get to sit under a tree with this child who is here with me. And how amazing is that? I get to do this hard and it's so meaningful and it's so wonderful. And just to bring myself back. So whenever I'm feeling, oh, I have 5,000 things to do, I think, wow, I get to make this nourishing meal for my family on a day that maybe I feel a little tired and it feels so great to do. But what a privilege that I have these people and that we get to eat this good food together, even when it's hard. And like, for me, that's gotten me through days that's really hard and not just in a survival way, getting me through that day. I feel good at the end of the day when I actively choose to change the way that I'm thinking about something that's hard.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's such a good reminder and such a simple thing that we can all implement every day. And yeah, whether you want to journal that or just have those little reminders to yourself in those tough times, I think that's something that everyone can easily implement without much effort.
There is still a lot more that we can share. And as you know, this is an ongoing journey for us. And you might be watching this and think, well, some of this is not relatable to me because I'm working full time or I've got 3 kids instead of only 1 kid. I'm hoping that there was some of this video that you can take and adapt to the life circumstances you have. And obviously, as Jacqui and I progress on this motherhood journey, we're going to be learning different things and changing them up. And I'm sure we'll do an update video where we share some new insights. And in our other videos, you can check them out. We do have like tips and tricks around different things and we can deep dive into certain topics. Like there's a lot of topics that are, we're very passionate about. One of them we briefly discussed was, not having 5 million things on the go. A big topic Jacqui and I discussed is moving away from a life of distraction for your child. And I think it might be worth almost like going into that a lot deeper, given that it seems to be this like default in our society to distract ourselves and to distract our children and to like have so much going on. Like we thrive in busy, but actually nobody's thriving in busy. It's just like an illusion. Anyway, let me not go too deep into that. But I do hope that there was some that we shared that you can take from this and that you can feel a sense of community and hear from us that yes, motherhood can be hard and there are challenges. I mean, it's been the most challenging time of my life, but it has been the best time of my life, like hands down, the most meaningful thing that I have ever done. And I would say, like, I thought I had a pretty meaningful life before I had a kid. Like, I didn't feel like there was this void in my life. And yet I'm still like, wow, what an experience. What an experience.
Yeah, and I hope that maybe we've provided some different ways of thinking about things, because the sort of tips that I've seen before geared towards moms for supporting themselves tends to a lot be framed in a way of you need to be away from your baby, or you need to take time, for yourself, or
Yeah.
things like that. And I don't necessarily think that you need to do those things for yourself. Maybe there's a time and a place for that. But I just think that there's things that you can do in your everyday life with your child, that can be really, really supportive.
Yeah. And I'm a firm believer of that because I've never been away from my child. In the 22 months of time we've had together, I've literally never been away from her. And I have found ways to fill up my cup that doesn't involve being literally the furthest I've been from her is like another room in our house. Now, that's not to say that's for everybody, but that's to say that we don't have to default the same with that victim mentality to fill up your cup, you have to get away from your kid. If you so choose to, by all means, but that's not something that you need to do. And I hope that, yeah, like Jack said, in this video, we've shared a lot of that. Anyway, if you like what we shared in this video, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, check out our course below and any of the other resources that we've linked down below, and let us know if anything that we touched on you would like us to deep dive more into that, or what you would like to hear more of, and we can discuss that.